Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome back to Atari ST A to Z, a series of short playthroughs of Atari ST games, some which I grew up with and some which are new to me. Today is kind of both really. Today we're taking a look at Q Bert, but not an official release of Q Bert. This is a public domain adaptation of the classic arcade game. Now if you're not familiar, the history of public domain software, particularly from this era, hasn't been particularly well documented. So whoever was actually behind this game is not known at the minute. I don't really know who made this. They haven't left a credit for themselves anywhere, and Atari Mania doesn't seem to know either. Now, public domain games, if you're not familiar, were typically distributed via public domain libraries, which were organisations who would send you discs including a selection of games and or utilities for a small fee, usually to cover media costs, duplication, postage, and a small profit for the company actually providing that convenience to you as well. If you were one of the few lucky people to have a modem, you could also download public domain software from bulletin board systems, but for the most part it was about getting involved with these public domain libraries, submitting your own software if you'd written your own software, or buying these discs. Now, Page 6 magazine, which I've mentioned a number of times over the course of this series, actually had one of the largest Atari ST public domain libraries in existence, with over 1,000 floppy disks available by the time the library and the publication closed. I'm not actually 100% sure if this one ever appeared as part of the Page 6 public domain library, largely because I don't have the time to go through all 1,050 disks or whatever it is to actually find out, but chances are it was in there at some point. So, let's go play Q Bert.
Okay, here we are with a public domain version of Q Bert, which I guess is French, because it's asking us for our norm. Pete. Q Bert, please wait. Like I say, as a public domain game, there is very little information about this online. Let's just see what it has to say in the info section. You are a prisoner of the pyramid complex, and the way to freedom is heavily guarded by strange beings. In order to quit a pyramid, you must transform each energy cube and reach the critic energy level. Blowing up a pyramid will transport you to the next one. Other prisoners said that the energy level of the lastest pyramid could transport you far away, but its mortal radiations will quickly destroy any creature. Coily. This magenta snake is the most powerful guardian. He's very fond of orange flesh. Fruit, the guardian's food. In your mouth it may reveal some strange power. Red fruit, poisoned fruit. It seems that some very intelligent being lives inside. Odd fruit, it seems like some egg. You should always keep an eye on them. Lifts, strange devices designed to transport guardians away. Perhaps could you use them? Ugh, the ugly green cyclop is very dangerous. He doesn't fall in the right direction. Avoid. Wrong way. Like Ugh, this heavy monster falls upwards. He's not very intelligent, but avoid again. Sam. Sam is very cute. He resets cubes in order to decrease the pyramid energy level. And Slick. Slick transforms cubes also. He's very fond of green fruits and often wants to catch them. I to abort, Q to quit game, press P to pause a game. Moving up will lead up and right. Okay. Well, let's give it a go then. Why can you navigate the menu with the joystick but not press the fire button to confirm something? That's annoying. You have to press enter. Get ready. Level 1, round 1. We appear to have absolutely no sound whatsoever. My headphones are in. Just had to check. But no, there's no sound. There's just no sound. Okay, fair enough. I mean, despite that fairly glaring oversight, that doesn't seem like a particularly bad version of Q Bert. Does the demo version have sound? No, it does not. Future Pete, add some sort of fun, non-copyright infringing soundtrack to this, please, because silence is boring. Or so I've been led to believe. Anyway, come on. I want to play again. Because I like Q Bert, even if it's suspiciously quiet. I mean, it controls well. The graphics are good. It's perhaps slightly too fast. Particularly on the first level. Yeah, it's too fast is the problem. And you only have 3 lives. It's like both the original arcade Q Bert and the Atari 8-bit version that we've previously seen on the Atari A to Z series. Much more sedate on the first level to give you a chance to get used to the controls. And then the speed gradually escalates and ramps up as you're playing to increase the challenge factor. You still take out Coily with the transporters though. It's wrong way. Oh, hello. Okay, so when there's a couple of them on the screen, it slows down to a more manageable speed, oddly enough. Yeah, so the speed when there were 3 sprites on screen at once was actually more the speed I would expect the game to start at. But again, for all these criticisms, what you've got to bear in mind is that this was a public domain release. This was not an official conversion of Q Bert, despite how surprisingly accurate it is in terms of visuals and gameplay style. Yeah, this was something someone just did because they wanted to. They didn't want to make any money out of it. They released it as public domain. And yeah, so this was a freebie that you could nab for no money whatsoever. Oh, damn it. That's what Q Bert's saying in that speech bubble. He's saying, oh, damn it. Oh no, Dark Pyramid. Nope. That's where it ends. Yeah, so it wasn't at all unusual for developers of public domain software to do ports of like copyrighted stuff like this. Like Q Bert was a trademark, but because this was public domain and therefore probably didn't come to the attention of I can't remember who made Q Bert originally offhand without checking. But yeah, because this was public domain, it probably didn't come to the attention of the original publishers, and so well, they don't care. I mean, they're not making any money out of this either. And compare that attitude to what Nintendo and Sega do to fan projects these days. Very different time. Very different time. Because both Sega and Nintendo have proven themselves to swoop down and absolutely destroy fan projects based on their properties. Even if they have no intention of doing anything with those properties themselves, and even if those fan projects aren't charging any money. I think part of the reason this happened so much on the Atari ST is because these games were quite old by this point, even. I mean, obviously they're really old now, but they were quite old by the time this would have been released on Atari ST to public domain libraries. And as such, there was probably not going to be an official version of Q Bert for Atari ST. So why shouldn't someone make it? Why shouldn't someone make an official version of Q Bert for Atari ST for those people who had given up their Atari 8-bits and still wanted to play Q Bert? Because, yeah, as easy as it is these days to sort of have multiple systems, back in the day, a lot of people had an Atari 8-bit and then they upgraded to an Atari ST. They got rid of their Atari 8-bit, they sold it or they traded it in or whatever, in order to get this exciting new computer. And if you look back at the magazines of the time, if you look back through issues of Page 6, there's always sort of comments from people in the letters pages about this whole upgrade process and whether it was worth doing and whether it was something you should do, and people who were very proud owners of the Atari 8-bit getting quite militant about it in some cases, and sort of resolutely sticking to their guns that the Atari 8-bit always did everything that they wanted it to do and they don't need an Atari ST, and Jack Trammell's a monster, which he was, but yeah, I guess that's part of the reason for this game's existence is simply because there wasn't an official version of Q Bert for Atari ST. And so in the absence of that, some resourceful programmer took it upon themselves to go, well, I like Q Bert, I like programming for the Atari ST, I'll make Q Bert for Atari ST. So they did. And then many years later, some fat British idiot would play it online and complain about the fact it didn't have any sound. My original point in that regard was that because this was a public domain release, it wasn't unusual for public domain releases to be released unfinished and then subsequently to be re-released with additional features later. Now, that's not quite the same as the update culture we have today, where players of games expect games to have continuous post-launch support and continuous streams of new content, otherwise they whinge about it being an abandoned game on Steam reviews and that sort of thing. Because there was no sort of built-in internet connection on these older computers, if you wanted a new version of a game, you typically have to mail off to the person who made the game in the first place for them to send you a disc with the new version on it. Like, patches did exist, but they were much rarer than they are today. And in some cases, the public domain libraries that I talked about, they would re-release versions of the game on later discs in their library. And in some cases, they would redo the image of the disc in their library for duplication, so that subsequent copies of that disc would have the later version of the game on it. There was no standard way of doing it. So some companies did it one way, some companies did it another. Some companies didn't bother with the updating at all, because I can imagine it was a massive pain in the ass for relatively little benefit. So. But anyway, like I say, my main experience with public domain back in the day was through the Page 6 public domain library, which is something that editor Les pushed really, really hard with every issue of Page 6. Every single issue, there were multiple sort of pull-out little mini newsletters almost about the public domain library and about the new releases in there. For both Atari 8-bit and Atari ST, and both were incredibly well supported public domain libraries for a long time. And through the duplication costs and the small amount of profit that Les made on each disc, for those, they helped support the magazine and keep it afloat for a very, very long time. I mean, Page 6 lasted in one form or another right up until I think it was about 1998 or so, which was well after Atari systems were relevant for most people. I mean, my dad was still using it for music, because for a long time the Atari ST was still fantastic for MIDI. And also to a certain extent for sample tracking. Although the Amiga was probably better for that. But yeah, Page 6 lasted for an astonishingly long time compared to any other magazine for Atari systems. Simply because it was able to support itself through these public domain discs and through the new old stock software that they managed to get their hands on. And sell off for discount prices, but they'd obviously managed to get hold of it themselves for quite cheap as well, because I mean no one else was buying them, so chances are the wholesalers were just going, you want 500 copies of Decision in the Desert for Atari 8-bit? Sure, go ahead, 20 quid. Probably not 20 quid, but you know, I suspect it wasn't expensive. I suspect it wasn't expensive to take those stocks off the hand of those running the warehouses of them. Yeah, this is just not quite right. I mean, it's not a terrible conversion of Q Bert by any means. Oops, but it's just not quite right. It's just a little bit too fast. It's a little bit too easy to get caught by the enemies. And it just doesn't quite feel like the arcade or the earlier home ports of it. But as I say, as what is essentially a fan game, it's not a bad effort at all, considering that whoever developed this probably wouldn't have had access to any sort of official resources. They would have had to create all these graphics by scratch. They would have had to figure out the game logic for themselves. And that's probably why it doesn't quite feel right. It's because they didn't have access to the information about how the original game was designed and about the speed the original game ran at and about all that sort of thing. Everything was just done using their best judgment. Right, let's have one more go and then I think we'll call that a day. Because there's not much more to say about this at the moment. But it is an interesting example of a phenomenon that was very much a thing in the 16-bit era. Go away. It's a shame that there's no sound, but like I say, other than that, it's a competent enough game. It's just not. Oops. It's just not what you might be accustomed to if you're more used to either the arcade original version of Q Bert or the most famous home ports for the 8-bit platforms. Cool. Right. Anyway, let's leave that there for today. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.
Take a